Okay, very good. Welcome, welcome, everybody, welcome. We are very excited to have you with us for the afternoon session that will be being presented by Mr. Jacob Carlock. He is a student, undergraduate student at the University of Colorado, Denver. We are so excited to have you here with us today. And we are going to get started here very shortly. I just want to give a couple more minutes for attendees to file through. Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, very good. In the name of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody to the 2024 Incarcerated Scholars Conference hosted by the Alliance for Higher Education in Prison. Thank you for registering for this event and for joining this session. We are so excited to have you. My name is Natalie Aragones. I'm the Operations and Program Administrator for the Alliance for Higher Education, and I am here today with Allison Lopez. We will be moderating this session, and joining us is Jacob Carlock. Again, he is a student at the University of Colorado, Denver, and we are so excited to present this session. A couple housekeeping rules before we get started I'd like to go over really quickly to ensure that everybody is familiar with the format of the session. Okay, the session is a webinar, meaning the audience is muted and off camera so that the presenters are the focus. Only the hosts and the presenters will be on camera. Although this is a webinar, we still want you to engage. You can use the React feature in the Zoom toolbar at the bottom of your screen to share reactions with the presenters. Also, please feel free to engage via the chat. The chat is now open, and we welcome you to use this function as well. Finally, during the Q&A portion of this session, we will open up the floor to questions and have more of a discussion with the presenters. There are a couple of ways that you can ask questions. The first way is by using the Q&A function on your toolbar. I want to mention that the Q&A questions can be added to the Q&A function throughout the presentation. You don't have to wait to the end. We are monitoring this option, and we will field questions to Jacob at the end of the presentation. Also, you can utilize the chat function, but I would suggest that the assured way to ensure that your question gets through is to utilize the Q&A function. Okay, with that being said, I am going to pass it over to Jacob so that he can do an introduction, and we welcome you, Jacob. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I just want to say I've had the opportunity to attend the opening remarks and a few of the sessions throughout the day, and they've been absolutely amazing. I want to begin just with expressing my immense gratitude to each and every individual who's here today. I am privileged, honored really with this unique opportunity to be amongst a community who can imagine the possibilities, understand the potential, and share in the hope of providing opportunities for higher education to an otherwise invisible population of people. Over the past 6 years, I have participated in what I can only describe as some of the most significant and formative educational experiences of my lifetime. And I've done so as an incarcerated individual. I was not alone, and I've witnessed my peers, my classmates, and my colleagues accomplish things that they never thought possible. I've celebrated milestones and achievements behind these walls with classmates who never imagined being called student or graduate, and I've seen these people transformed as a result. In the spaces we shared as students, we found possibility. In the classrooms where our thoughts were valued, we found potential, and wherever else you might find us, we were working together, choosing new futures, and it was there that we found hope. My name is Jacob Michael Carlock. I am a father to my amazing daughter. I'm a spouse to my exceptional fiance. I'm a brother to my courageous sister, a son to my father who recently passed, and to my mother who is always one of the best for me. I'm an undergraduate student at the University of Colorado, Denver, and I'm an incarcerated individual. I've been incarcerated for nearly 13 years of a 26-year sentence, and I'm currently housed in the Colorado Department of Corrections at the Arrowhead Correctional Center. I am the cause of a great deal of harm to the victims of my crime, and in turn, responsible for the harm caused to the community in which I lived. I've spent countless amounts of time considering what the ripple effects of that harm have created for those folks. And I also often consider the harm experienced by my family and loved ones as a result of my choices. In the years leading up to my incarceration, I was deeply engaged in very personal and private struggles with self-worth and self-esteem issues, along with codependency and substance use disorder. I had been suffering some of these issues since elementary school, where I was bullied and picked on for being from a family that was lower socioeconomic status than the majority of my classmates. Some people's children are mean. And later, at age 13, I experienced a difficult and unwanted sexual trauma, which left me feeling even more alone, deeply frustrated, without a voice, and searching for something I would never find. And then I learned a fast way to cope with those things through the use of intoxicating substances. Those traumas and the coping mechanisms that I used to survive them would forever alter the course of my life. When I entered prison, I was a broken individual with little idea of who I really was. I spent the first years of my incarceration attempting to conceal my shame, distancing myself from my traumas, and doing whatever I could that I thought would insulate me from the reality of the harm I'd caused. And of course, my substance use disorder went wildly unresolved for the first years of my incarceration. As of today, I've been choosing a life free of substances for nearly 8 years. I have found peace within myself regarding my past trauma, and with that has come great relief and clarity. It was early in this newfound clarity when I began asking myself, who am I? What I hope to accomplish in the next 30 minutes is to provide insight through my own lived experience, along with a combination of research and other observations, into how higher education in prison is essential in empowering incarcerated students to reconceptualize their identities in positive and affirming ways through reclaiming autonomy, building competence, fostering meaningful social connection, finding belonging, and as a result, having a lasting positive impact on the culture within our prisons while we're incarcerated, and then positively impacting our communities upon release. As we explore the possibilities of identity development in the carceral landscape, I feel like it's important to also examine the landscape itself, providing context of what reality looks like for many incarcerated individuals who may arrive in a prison classroom. I would like to invite you all now to walk with me through this contextual landscape. It may come as no surprise that our prisons are filled with people who come from a myriad of backgrounds that share a high occurrence of intersection through poverty and trauma. In 2021, author and educator M. Daniels explains that complex trauma histories, race, and conditions of poverty are among multiple factors to accompany those entering a prison classroom. Daniels also points out that low educational attainment, substance use disorder, and untreated mental health needs are prevalent amongst our incarcerated students. There's a fair chance that, like myself, most of my incarcerated peers have experiences that include suffering multiple childhood traumas, and as a result have learned a number of maladaptive coping skills. Prison isn't exactly a place packed with trust fund babies or peace-loving hippies. And the reality is, the traumas that I've experienced in life likely pale in comparison to those of my peers. In addition to the traumas that many people have faced before being incarcerated, there is a seldom discussed trauma that those becoming incarcerated will encounter. You see, upon entering the institutions of corrections, you are stripped of your belongings, unplugged from your life outside of the institution, and severed are any personal, social, or professional roles held in the community from which you came. Complete detachment from your sense of self, along with the loss of autonomy and the reality that you're being removed from your citizenship, are difficult, to say the least. During the intake process, you're screened, evaluated, and assessed to determine your risk factors: disciplinary risk, custody risk, risk to reoffend. The concern about what risk you pose to everything is ever present, and that bleeds over onto us, who then begin improperly assessing everyone else around us as a risk, including ourselves. Needless to say, coming to prison is traumatic in and of itself. Irving Goffman introduces the term mortification in a 1961 publication titled Asylums, Essays on the Social Situation of Mental Patients and Other Inmates. And though this text is 65 years old, Goffman accurately describes the phenomenon that myself and the nearly 2 million other Americans who are incarcerated have experienced. One in which the inmate may become mortified or suffer the loss of the many roles he or she occupied in the wider world. He calls this mortification. The roles that we hold as human beings are largely related to, if not directly linked to, our identities and our overall perception of self. So, who are you after everything has been stripped away? What remained in my case, in the absence, is a DOC number and a risk score. The role I was left with, the one I was forced to accept, the role provided by the institution, is the only one available: the role of offender. It's a role that is completely dependent upon the institution, defined by submission, powerlessness, and knowing one's place in what Michelle Alexander has called the new Jim Crow. Once I had completed the intake process, I was simply set off to exist in this landscape. A landscape that Allison Liebling observes as being rich with fear, anxiety, loneliness, trauma, depression, injustice, powerlessness, violence, rejection, and uncertainty. However, I would soon discover that there were other roles available, other identities one could easily assume, though they were roles and identities constructed from and strongly held by the culture existing within our prisons. The upside down kingdom. As Bill Keller so eloquently titles a chapter in his 2022 book, What's Prison For?, Keller writes about a telephone conversation he had with an individual who's incarcerated named Kayron Jackson. And what Kayron Jackson says in this passage is a blaring and unfortunate reality. He says, anyone with half a sound mind entering a prison environment will soon discover that prisoners govern themselves by codes and rules that counter their own best interests. This rings true in my experience, as I'm met with a barrage of questions while crossing the prison yard from intake to my living unit, day one. Questions about my crime, about what town I came from, about my racial identity and whether or not I hold ideologies rooted in white supremacy. I'm told which table I'm allowed to sit, which phone I'm to use, who to talk to, who not to talk to. I'm screened, background checked, categorized, scrutinized for perceived weakness. And this line of inquiry is coming from other incarcerated folks. At no point this far has anyone asked me if I'm okay or if I consent to any of this. And the undertone of what could happen if I don't answer these questions or if these rules are not followed is unspoken and shrouded in silence. I immediately begin to recognize that silence is a common tenet of this culture. It's one that supports and perpetuates the many forms of simultaneously occurring oppression. I have both witnessed and experienced violence and threats of violence. Not the sensationalized, ridiculous depictions of violence that drive the bottom line for Hollywood films, but actual violence driven by real factors of incarceration. During the first decade of my stay, I was less than 10 yards away from 2 separate killings. Both of the men who lost their lives were folks I interacted with daily, and the latter was someone I had previously shared a cell with for over 18 months. We were friends. I also knew and interacted with the men who took their lives. I slowly sunk into this I accepted silently that this is what my life was going to look like for the next few decades. And I too began reproducing that culture, a culture of silent stoicism, firmly reinforced by what Thomas Hobbes has described as a generalized insecurity and consumptive wariness about those one whom is forced to live. Business as usual. In a 2016 article titled "I Would Be a Bulldog," tracing the spillover of carceral identity, Patrick Lopez Aguado discusses the socialization process I've just barely scratched the surface on. He says, considering the prison as a socializing institution begins with understanding the concept of prisonization, a socialization process that includes the integration into a primary prison group and an acceptance of the dogmas and mores of the primary group and general penal population. What Patrick Lopez Aguado is identifying, what Allison Liebling observed, what K. Ron Jackson says to Bill Keller, and what I have both witnessed and experienced point directly to issues within the institutional culture that have a direct adverse impact on the growth and development of incarcerated individuals. This is a wicked problem, as it impacts everyone who lives within and works within our prisons and is perpetuated by some of the same people. So after several years of antipathetic acceptance of this environment, its drowning silence in the culture within, I knew something had to give, and I started desperately seeking change. In my search for change, I discovered a solution more powerful than I could ever have imagined, and I would like to now discuss what I discovered. It's happy from here on out, so we're good. I feel strongly that part of, if not all of the solution to this and other carceral problems is education and the effects higher education programs can have on positive identity development. I have witnessed huge cultural shifts within the populations where college education and liberal arts programming are taking place. I personally know individuals who've been positively transformed through these opportunities, and I have experienced profound change. In a lot of ways, me being here today with you all is evidence to those claims. It begins with providing safe spaces where individuals are invited to share their thoughts and experiences. Spaces that fall outside of the cultural norms of the institution, where alternate norms can be chosen and created. It's in these spaces where the role of offender can be exchanged for the role of student. And the student may find a sense of belonging. Where somebody feels as if they belong, they might begin to embrace the possibilities of what they can become. In his book, The Courage to Teach, Parker J. Palmer writes, the space should invite the voice of the individual and the voice of the group. If a space is to support learning, it must invite students to find their authentic voices. What I'm here to tell you today is that those spaces are called classrooms. Prison classrooms are a crucial arena for incarcerated students to begin navigating their identity and sense of self, to voice doubt in their views and analyze their own prejudices while discovering their aspirations and making new social connections. The classroom becomes a world where agency and autonomy are encouraged. And for many, it may be the first time emerging from the deafening silence of prison and hearing their own voices, while at the same time being seen for their potential and their value. A stark contrast to being assessed for their risk. It was in the classroom that I first heard my own voice, where I first felt belonging, and shortly thereafter, I discovered a never before felt sense of motivation. Learning how to effectively use my voice has been one key factor contributing to both my success and my ability to advocate for the change I was so desperately seeking. Something that Lori Pompa writes passionately about in a 2011 book titled Challenging the Prison Industrial Complex. Pompa points specifically to juxtaposition of silence and voice. She writes, the issue of silencing and voice is especially significant for incarcerated students, many of whom have experienced years of silencing at the hands of forces that have, in large measure, rendered them unable to use the voices they have. Those words are amazing to me. Lori Papa wrote those words nearly 10 years before I would have the opportunity to meet Dr. Stephen Hartnett, who is the editor of that book. And Dr. Hartnett is also the chair of the communication department at the University of Colorado, Denver, and the head of the amazing team at UCD's College and Prison program, a program in which I'm pursuing my bachelor's in communication. I will draw from my experience in that program and the impact it has had, along with how I believe the program positively enhanced the identity of its students. It's important to note here that though my focus today is on UCD, there were other significant programs simultaneously occurring, rooted in theater and other arts and humanities, of which myself and many of my peers were involved. Each of these programs deserves their own recognition, and they have all contributed to amazing outcomes. I digress. Anyhow, there are an abundance of highly effective theories available regarding education. I'm going to lean momentarily on self-determination theory, as it provides a basis for understanding motivation and its relationship to education, and in this case, to positive identity development. This theory was introduced in 1985 by Deci and Ryan, and it posits that humans are driven by innate psychological needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness. These three needs are essential when considering intrinsic motivation, or the drive to pursue for one's own sake rather than through persuasion or pressure. Intrinsic motivation is key to educational success initially, and thereafter may become a renewing source of drive for many other pursuits. I want to start by talking about autonomy. Autonomy for incarcerated students is a need that cannot be overstated, and as I've illustrated, incarcerated individuals experience a tremendous loss of autonomy simply by existing in carceral environments. Higher education presents unique opportunities for incarcerated students to find a sense of agency and self-expression that is not readily available outside of these spaces. It's within the classroom where educators can empower students to claim ownership of their academic pursuits and in turn ownership of many other aspects of their life. Higher education, the faculty, academic advisors, and support staff within might be among the first people who provide unique choices to incarcerated students regarding which classes to take, which degree pathways are available, providing valuable insight into what the possibilities are for the future graduate. The prospect of a new student becoming a future graduate is an offering of potential. And in my case, that overshadowed the damning feeling of being assessed as a risk. When the University of Colorado, Denver first announced its strategic communication program nearly 4 years ago, I was immediately interested. The flyer was strategically vague, something I would come to appreciate more as time went on. Though it was interesting enough for me to submit the required letter of interest. And shortly thereafter, myself and roughly 40 of my peers in 2 separate facilities were accepted into the program. After the first few weeks of class, all of us students were provided the opportunity to meet with academic advisors in person to discuss each of our individual academic plans. This experience, which is probably standard and mundane in the free world, is packed with autonomy and was absolutely foundational in affirming my choice to apply for this program. Once in the classroom, our professors provided choices as to which research topics were available, and then fostered an environment where these diverse dialogical exchanges were invited. We haven't had to leave the classroom for any of these simple common practices, which all truly promote autonomy and are going to have a lasting positive impact on the individual. Let's move on to competence. Competence is an essential component to sustaining motivation and perseverance in this landscape, which is rife with challenges and obstacles. For many imprisoned struggles with self-confidence and self-doubt, feelings of inadequacy, they're common. So holding spaces where competence can be cultivated is wildly important. Educators have a special role in competence building through collaborating with their students to set realistic, attainable education goals, and then providing assignments that build upon the strengths of the individual, and finally offering constructive feedback that affirm those strengths. Again, simple stuff, right, in the free world. These things in here are like gold. A practice that the University of Colorado team utilized in their program was to first collaborate with us and then build and cultivate the writing skills of the students. Once we were familiar with these skills, we were provided an opportunity to publish that work in Captured Words, Free Thoughts, which is a biannual publication that's filled with contributions from incarcerated people across the country and published through the university. It was through this process that myself and my classmates published our work. And I think where our voices transcended the walls, right? After we published Free Thoughts, for many of us, there was a noticeable focus on refining those skills because we knew this opportunity was going to be available again. So we worked hard, we refined, we revised, we wrote, and again, we published. With this newfound momentum, one of my classmates and I made the decision to collaborate on a piece on education in prison. And this time we sought to publish outside of Captured Words, Free Thoughts on a more mainstream platform. And with the help of our gifted media writing professor, Lisa Dickstein, and support from communication genius, Dr. Ben Boyce, who's been nothing but an inspiration and a role model, we found success in authoring an article. And on Sunday, December 18th, 2022, it was published by the Denver Westward. The article is titled Educating Incarcerated Individuals, an Easy Choice by Sean Mueller and Jacob Carlock. I believe it's still available for reading online. In the spirit of further building competence through affirming the strengths of their students, the University of Colorado team nominated myself and Sean Mueller for the 2023 Rob Lee Ryan Student Leadership Award. Based on the work we did in our Westward article and the subsequent positive attention it brought to the UCD program. I'm so happy to say that Sean and myself did win the award, and I was invited to attend the award ceremony virtually. And I'm going to let you know that that left me feeling as if I belonged with and was related to both the community on campus and the outside world. Which brings me to my third and final pillar of self-determination theory, which is relatedness. Relatedness and belonging are fundamental aspects of human well-being, and social connections are essential in both. In the carceral world, where social isolation and weariness can be found in abundance, the feelings of relatedness and belonging are of significant importance. Educators play a pivotal part in cultivating and fostering supportive, inclusive environments in the classroom, where students feel valued, respected, and connected to both their peers and instructors. Group projects, collaborative learning activities all have the power to create meaningful relationships, which allow students to explore their differences and challenge ideas that normally create divides amongst incarcerated populations. I can't say more about relatedness and belonging. It is probably the most fundamental feeling someone in this situation can have. Now that we've looked closer at how higher ed in prison has a significant impact on autonomy, competence, relatedness, and belonging, and how those factors are directly related to positive identity development, I want to look at one last component called civic orientation, which is the perception one holds about themselves and how they might positively contribute or impact others in their community. I'm going to highlight an article that was published in 2023 called Transformational Learning and Identity Shift, Evidence from a Campus Behind Bars. It was written by Amy Lerman and Meredith Sadin, published in 2023. The authors hypothesize that prison higher education can enable students to adopt a new non-carceral identity, increasing both self-efficacy and civic orientation. What Lerman and Sadin have hypothesized in their work has been absolutely undeniable in my experience, which is that incarcerated individuals who have participated in higher ed in prison are likely to find their way into high integrity positions of service and leadership. Most everyone I know who participated in higher ed programming is in fact working in positions of service and leadership while incarcerated. And what is even more remarkable is that upon release, this is not a coincidence. And I can personally introduce you to a number of individuals who fit this bill, all of which are having an intentional impact on the culture and have been since early on in their higher ed journeys. Unfortunately, I have to limit it to just 4 people as my time is running short. The first individual is David Carrillo, who I first met in 2015. And I wouldn't have much interaction with David until 2019, when I applied for a program in which he was a core group facilitator, an amazing program, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. David Carrillo is a gifted facilitator. And I would eventually end up working closely with David on a few platforms, the largest of which was the first ever collaborative staff inmate council at the facility we both spent many years in. The overarching goal of this council was to help guide facility policy decisions in fostering positive culture change. Though this was probably some of the most challenging work I've ever done, we made progress on that goal. And one of those things that we accomplished that had a solid impact on the culture was introducing the first ever Toastmasters Gavel Club to a Colorado prison. With the support of an amazing staff member who I will call Wendy, the Toastmasters Club was launched and soon became a staple forum for the population to find and share our voices. For those of you who are unaware of what Toastmasters is, I can briefly sum it up by saying it's a program where public speaking and presentation skills are the focus. I hope I'm not letting down any of my fellow Toastmasters today. While working with David, I discovered that he was finishing work on his master's degree through Adams State University. And in December of 2022, while at a combined graduation for the University of Colorado Denver Strategic Communication program that I was in, Adams State University graduates were also being celebrated. I have the privilege of watching the man who at this point in time had spent nearly 3 decades of a never-ending life without parole sentence as he accepted his hard-earned master's degree. David Carrillo has been one of the most impactful role models I've ever had the privilege of working with, and I can promise you that my eyes were not the only ones filled with tears of joy that day. There were a lot of people doing this. Shortly after the graduation ceremony, David Carrillo would become one of the first incarcerated professors in the United States to teach incarcerated students, and he did so as an employee of Adams State University. There is absolutely no better example of how higher education in prison can be a tool to enhance the identity of an individual and subsequently orient that individual to positively impact the culture within our prisons. And to further drive that point home, in the March-April 2024 issue of College Inside, journalist Jason Gonzalez writes this about David. He says, after becoming one of the first incarcerated professors in the country to teach incarcerated students, David Carrillo was released after Colorado Governor Jared Polis granted him clemency, in part due to his work as an Adams State University educator. I know that if we were in an auditorium right now, that we would all be on our feet, and we should be, because this is an amazing accomplishment. So David Carrillo, now a citizen of the free world, continues in his role as a professor for Adams State, teaching our incarcerated populations. While at the same time, I know that he is having a positive impact on the community at large. So David is also a graduate of, and now a professor for the Adult Basic Education Authorization Program, which is headed up by another mentor and role model of mine, Dr. John Dunsmore. Dr. Dunsmore and the team at the Rocky Mountain Education Center lead the only in-prison program of this kind in the United States. It's a program that is focused on educating and developing incarcerated professionals to teach our peers who are in need of their high school equivalency. This is another program that will, without a doubt, have a lasting impact on everyone it touches. And I could spend hours talking about how. I just can't do it today. It's in this program, the ABEA program, that I'm also a classmate to the second amazing person I want to introduce, who is one of the most brilliant, good-natured individuals I've ever met. Not surprisingly, she is featured in the May-June 2024 issue of College Inside, wherein journalist Charlotte West highlights another first for Colorado prison education. She tells readers about Serena Ahmad, who is, and I quote, the first incarcerated woman in the United States to teach as an adjunct professor at a women's facility. Another amazing accomplishment. Evidence, evidence, evidence. I can't say enough about Serena. What I will say is that any student who is fortunate enough to have Serena as a professor is going to receive a thoughtful, top-notch education one would only expect to find in our most prestigious higher learning institutions. I have a deep admiration for both Serena Ahmad and David Carrillo, who both work for Adams State University as professors. And I know David is working for the Rocky Mountain Education Center in the same capacity. And I believe that if Serena is not already teaching the incarcerated through that program, that she will be. As my presentation comes to a close, I want to share with you two last amazing people. And I'm going to talk about them in tandem, not only because my time is really running short now, but because the three of us spent many years incarcerated together. We were also together in multiple different programs and as close friends. Those two amazing people are Bradley Erickson and Jordan Morris. So Brad, State University, at the same time Jordan and myself were in the University of Colorado, Denver. At the same time, the three of us were also on the DU Pi leadership team. And then later in 2023, we would all three be transferred to a minimum security facility where we would participate in a pilot program based on the Norwegian prison model, where the focus is on supporting healing, growth, and renewed purpose. This currently ongoing program is having a profound effect on folks, and it is also deserving of its own presentation, maybe at the next conference. Jordan and I have collaborated on multiple successful projects over the years, and he has gone on to do amazing things out in the community as a leader, as he was released on parole 9 months ago. Brad was also freed last year when Colorado Governor Jared Polis made a clemency decision based on, in part, Brad's dedicated service work as a mental health peer assistant here incarcerated, as a leader, facilitator, and advocate of the Insight Prison Project's Restorative Justice Education Program, and also his outstanding academic achievements. Brad is currently in the community working as a certified peer recovery coach at Elevate Recovery, which is a local substance use recovery organization, of which the founder and CEO is none other than Jordan Morris. Part of Brad and Jordan's mission is to be of service to and provide meaningful opportunities for individuals suffering from substance use disorder, which is something that all three of us have in common. One of the essential training components that qualified both Brad and Jordan to work in the recovery field was designed by another role model of mine, Ginger Ross, the Choices Peer Recovery Coach Training Program. It's a program that myself and 10 other incarcerated professionals have been facilitating for our peers since 2022. And I had the pleasure of training both Brad and Jordan in the months leading up to their respective releases. This is another two solid examples of service and leadership by folks who went on the higher ed journey while in prison. Again, it's not a coincidence that everyone I introduced today all participated in higher education and other liberal arts programming, experienced positive identity development as a result, and have gone on to serve their respective communities in a positive and impactful manner as leaders. I have just shared with you only a fraction of my journey through higher ed and prison. I have only recounted for you an inkling of positive identity development and civic orientation evidence. only a glimmer of how that has impacted our culture. I only talked about 4 of my peers who I share these experiences with. There are 40 other UCD students, a number of Trinidad State University students, Regis University students, Adams State University students. I feel confident and safe believing that each of these individuals has a unique and remarkable story to share that most likely parallels what I have shared with you today. On the other hand, I would estimate in the past 5 years, only 2.5% of Colorado's incarcerated population have participated in higher ed programs. Whether that be due to lack of access, lack of opportunity, lack of resource, or some other unknown circumstance. I would hope that with what we know about higher education in prison and the impact it has, both while incarcerated and upon reentry, that we can work towards finding solutions that provide more access and expanded opportunities for our incarcerated populations so they can find what I found, which is belonging. This has been a true pleasure. All of you for your time and your attention and for inviting me here to belong with you. I'm going to take just a moment before we go into the Q&A to give credit and thanks to the many people who've supported myself and my peers on their higher ed journeys. I'm going to start with, from the CDOC, Melissa Smith and Lee Burrows, for recognizing the value in education for our incarcerated populations. Without these 2 amazing humans, none of this would be possible. The entire administration, staff, and incarcerated population at Skyline Correctional Center and Colorado Territorial Correctional Facility, where all of my education took place. You guys are all amazing. Keep pushing. To the administration and staff here at Arrowhead who have supported my efforts with this presentation and in many other things that I do. To the University of Colorado Denver College and Prison team, Dr. Hartnett, Dr. Boyce, doctoral candidate Megan Cosgrove, Lisa Dickstein, Laurel Dodds, Kristen Salisbury, Shauna Maida, the community on campus, and everybody there who has supported this amazing program. I hope to see you all soon. The Rocky Mountain Education Center at Red Rocks Community College, Dr. John Dunsmore, Harry Childerston, David Creo, your entire faculty and support staff, and to all of my ABEA classmates who helped make this program a success. You all are going to impact many lives with the valuable tools that we're learning and sharing in those classrooms. Remerge, Carol Peoples, Michael Clifton, and your team, thank you for continuing to show up for folks and connecting them to much needed resource and for all of your hard work. The Insight Prison Project Restorative Justice Education Program, your entire team is amazing and the work you do is absolutely essential. Dr. Claire Hamor, you've forever changed my life and the lives of so many others. Thank you. Dr. Hamilton, your vision continues and your legacy lives on through many. Serenity Recovery Connection, Rachel Fowler, Nick Paxel, your whole team over there. You guys have all been amazing and such an inspiration. I look forward to any work we may do in the future. Ginger Ross, the creator of the Choices Peer Recovery Coach Training Program. You've touched many lives behind these walls, and I also look forward to anything we do in the future. Elevate Recovery, my boys, Brad and Jordan, I love you guys. Unbound Authors, Joybell Phelan. I can't say enough about Joybell. She represents the voices of the incarcerated in so many ways. You're amazing. To my father for believing in me, no matter what, I miss you. And to my amazing fiance, Emma, for standing by my side always and encouraging me to pursue these dreams. I love you. And sorry. And finally, to the team at the Alliance for Higher Education in Prison, for providing this opportunity, for elevating our voices, and for supporting our dreams. Thank you all. Q&A time, baby.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacob. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. My voice is shaking. What an opportunity to share this space with you and learn from you today. I want to let you know that your leadership and your service has touched all of us. All of us will walk away from this better people because of what we've heard from your presentation today. I want to definitely provide the time and space to get to some of these questions. I thank you again for your leadership, your strength. This has been absolutely incredible. And the power that I feel right now through this screen, I can guarantee that everybody on this call is feeling the same thing. And we're moving forward together in community, in unity, in strength, empowerment. And like you said, the conduit to positive identity development is higher education. And thank you. Thank you. You're an incredible presenter, an incredible speaker, an incredible scholar. And we thank you for your contributions today. I'll pass this off to Allison.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you so much, Jacob. That was an amazing presentation. And I echo everything Natalie said. And there are so many shout outs in the chat, and a lot of people are really interested in your work that you've been doing, and your it sounds like you already have a lot of stuff that's been published, and there's been a few people that have been linking it in the chat, and there are people that are interested in the research and the presentation that you gave today. And so if you do publish that in the future or continue to publish, please let us know so that we can help promote it and get it out to our community. I want to be protective of your work and don't want you to give out your work in anything, but I want, like, once you publish it and that, or anytime you want to share it, let us know and we can help spread it to everyone because folks are really interested in it. Okay, I am going to ask the first question from Ben Boyce, and this one is: a big part of what you're describing is learning and education. How did you find your thirst for knowledge? This is kind of a two-parter. How do we help other incarcerated would-be learners discover the same desire to learn for learning's sake?
That's an amazing question, and no surprise. I think we have to first start, and I'm going to go back to something that was said this morning at the fireside chat, is we can't expect incarcerated individuals to jump on educational opportunities after not having access to them for so many years. People don't know that they have the capacity to change their life and the lives of people around them, and they have to be introduced to these things gradually. I'm not saying hold back the opportunities, bring them on, but I think there's an expectation that when you throw some of these things out there, that why aren't there hundreds of people applying? As was the case in our UCD program. I think that everybody had this imposter syndrome. All of us were like, well, we're not college students. I don't know how to do this. How do I even write the letter of interest? So I think that by exposing people to what the possibilities are is where we're going to get buy-in. And through such conferences like this, like exposing people to other incarcerated folks who have found the thing for them, and allowing them to elevate their voice and talk about that thing. And for the people who are attracted to that, making sure they're invited into those spaces. I hope that answers your question.
All right. Okay, the next one is from Chrissy Willett, and this is in reference to a recent article that you published in the Sage Journals. And in it, you talked about identity transformation from an incarcerated person to a pro-social member of the larger community in the world. And can you talk a little bit more about how you navigated that liminal space?
Well, liminal space is it, right? The liminal is where we can step out of where we currently are and into where we want to be. I think if we look at, I think every human being has an image of what they are, who they are, a self-perception, if you will. And I think that every person also somewhere here has an idea of who they want to be. And I think the liminal is right in between those things. It's on the cusp of becoming, and learning how to do that through processes which are empowering and which make you feel good. I'm not kidding about this renewing sense of drive that I searched for years and years. I was empty. And when I found this tiny droplet of becoming, like it keeps fueling itself. It might be the death of me, which is a good thing, right? Like there's so much out there that we don't know. And just being able to step on the cusp of becoming any of those things is where that happens. And education provides tools for critical self-reflection. It provides tools to look at things from a distance and imagine, how would you solve this problem? And then realizing that, wait, these are problems that I have too. So I think just education in and of itself, especially when fostered by people who are strength-based and person-centered, are going to move you from who you are to who you want to be.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is another question from Ben. Any advice for writers who are trying to get their writing out there, or any publications that you would recommend starting with?
Yeah, I think you have to put it all on paper, whatever it is, and just submit it. And if there are people who are interested in publishing what you've written, they're going to send you feedback on what you can talk more about or what you should expand upon. And also in that process, you're going to be able to get out a lot of things. Just when writing this presentation, I promise you, I have like 30 pages of stuff that is not in here that I wrote during this presentation to arrive at the conclusions I arrived at. So write everything. And then, yeah, obviously there are some great places out there. The Marshall Project has a great publication that comes out. Captured Words, Free Thoughts has a great publication. I've seen so many different places and things, Unbound Authors, Prison Journalism Project. I mean, I wish I had a list. I would just go ahead and read it to you guys, but they're out there. Those organizations are out there. Find them. The Sun, that's a great one. So hope that answers your question.
All right, this one is from Claire Hamor. Could you talk a little bit about how your identity as a man has grown through the educational experiences that you've had inside?
Well, my identity as a human has grown. And I think that by immersing ourselves into uncomfortable situations and by synchronizing with those around us and by moving together in joy and in harmony, there again exists that liminal space where you can become any of those things. One of the things, and I have an affinity for clowns, and you guys can laugh at me later, but the reason this is significant to this question is because I always wondered, why do I like clowns so much? And it's because we're in this emotionally repressive environment incarcerated people are. There's not an outpouring of emotion at every corner you look. There's a lot of stoic people trying to survive this. And clowns have this innate ability to overexpress everything. And it's in this very thing that we find the transition between not emoting at all and having this amazing power to overly express things. And so my transformation has come in just realizing that those options are out there. Maybe not to the extreme of being a clown, but maybe. Like we can express ourselves and we can have fun while doing it. I hope that answers your question.
All right, we have a couple questions from the chat, it looks like. Let me see. All right, this might be a good one to close with. So Jacob, this is from Sean Mueller. You've done a great job of keeping your strength in the face of adversity. what can you share with others to maintain focus on the big goal?
Fellowship with your peers. People about what you're experiencing, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and listen to what they have to say too. We all have so many things inside of us that deserve other people to hear, and we all need to hear what other people have to say. Again, in these carceral environments, it's very comfortable to remain isolated, to not be authentic, to not be vulnerable. And when you can sit down and start dialoguing with someone, and you can really start talking about who you are and finding out who someone else is, you're going to find strength in that. This moment that I'm having here with you guys that is amazing has not come without years of connecting with people. What I found in the absence of connection were all those things I described early on in this presentation. What I found in connection are all the things that are happening right now. Continue to fellowship with people, continue to connect, and share the love that you have with other human beings.
Yeah, I mean, fellowship's one of the most powerful elements of identity construction too. All right. There's so many appreciative messages in the chat for you here, Jacob. I'm gonna turn this back over to Natalie, but there's some unanswered questions in here that are really interesting. So just we'll record the rest of these questions for you.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much.
I just want to add, we have 3 minutes. I want to be cognizant of time. The most important thing I think we could do is probably squeeze in one more question if you'd like, Jacob.
Yeah.
And I'll close this out.
Okay. All right. So we have in California, we are struggling to find resources for students to pursue master's programs without current funding. How do we navigate to get funding? This is a tough question, but one for the whole field.
Yeah, I wish I had the answer for that. I think we continue to run into funding problems. I just had a correspondence with an individual the other day, and they said that most of their work is going into finding fundings to continue these pursuits. But what I will say is this, and this again came from an individual from this morning. Her name was Victoria Scott, and I believe she's in Alliance.
Yes.
She said that annually we spend 80 billion with a B dollars on incarcerating individuals. And if we look back to 2013, there was a RAND report that was written that says for every $1 that we spend on higher education in prison, we're saving up to $5 in future incarceration costs. And I've written about that. Myself and Sean Mueller actually wrote about that. It just makes so much fiscal sense to invest now in individuals than to be having this conversation again in 3 to 5 years. Like, what do we do? Let's look at how we're spending that money. I think there's plenty of people out there in the world who have a huge heart and a philanthropic bone. And I think we just need to let them know what this is doing for individuals and what it can do for people as they progress through education and return to communities. I think that we're going to find everything we need in education, and we just need to make that investment. I wish I had a more specific answer, but there's the altruistic answer.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Thanks again. An incredible, absolutely incredible afternoon that we've spent with you. Thank you for all of your beyond impressive insights. You are a leader, you are an inspirer. You, I tell you what, you've gone above and beyond for the Toastmasters, and what you've done impacting our hearts today we'll walk away from this stronger, more encouraged, more empowered. I tell you what, you talked about relatedness and belonging, and we're building that today together as a community. I think that there are a lot of change makers on this call. I think that we share common goals in collaborating and working together to foster better futures. And I'm just very, very humbled and grateful that we were able to share this time with you. I want to mention that tomorrow we're going to continue with day 2 of the Incarcerated Scholars Conference, and that will begin tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope everybody is able to join us again, and thank you so much for everybody showing Jacob incredible love through the reactions. You inspire all of us, Jacob. Thank you very, very much. That's all we have today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Thank
You
you.
guys have a great day. Be safe.